It's funny how we all know the phrase reduce, reuse, recycle,
Right.
but it feels like those first two kind of get shoved under the rug sometimes.
Yeah.
It's all about the recycling bin these days, which, don't get me wrong, it's important.
Oh, for sure.
But you sent in this GreenWaySquad article, why do we forget the other two R's? So clearly, something about this resonated, and that's what we're diving deep into today, why reduce and reuse deserve way more attention in our quest for a greener planet, right?
Absolutely. And it's amazing how even our leisure activities reflect that focus on recycling,
Oh, yeah.
Like, the article mentions Minecraft.
What? Minecraft? Seriously?
Yeah. Even there, it's all about recycling.
Wow. I haven't played Minecraft in ages, but I guess even virtual worlds are all about that recycling life.
Totally. It shows how deeply ingrained it's become. There's a but. While recycling is crucial, that laser focus can overshadow those foundational elements of sustainability, reducing what we consume in the first place and finding ways to reuse what we already have.
It's like we were given this catchy little slogan, and we all just kind of clung to the easiest R and called it a day.
It's true.
But was it always this way? Before recycling bins took over our kitchens, did people actually live by reduce and reuse?
It's interesting you bring that up.
Yeah.
Because until the late 19th century, mass production wasn't what it is today.
Right. Things were so different back then.
Exactly. Back then, reduce and reuse weren't trendy buzzwords.
More like survival.
Yeah. They were necessities woven into everyday life. It wasn't even always about the environment. It was just practical.
Totally.
Mending clothes instead of tossing them.
Making do.
Repairing tools instead of just clicking buy now.
It's such a stark contrast to how we live now,
It is.
Fast fashion, disposable, everything. I mean, what would happen if we could just bring back a little bit of that make, do, and mend mentality? What impact would that have on the planet, you think?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Right.
And it really highlights how, while recycling is vital, it can't be the only solution.
Definitely no.
The article actually puts it really well. They have this whole thought experiment about, what if we could only pick one R?
Oh, interesting. Okay, I'm game. So let's start with reduce. What happens in a world completely focused on reducing consumption, but no reuse, no recycling?
Even if everyone drastically cut back on buying things, we still have to deal with all the stuff that's already out there.
That's true.
Landfills would still be overflowing.
Yeah. Right, and we'd still need to produce at least some things, which has its own impact.
Exactly. So reducing consumption is huge, but it doesn't magically make the waste disappear.
Makes sense. It's like slowing down a speeding car. It helps, but you still need to steer and eventually stop completely.
I like that analogy.
Okay, so what about a world obsessed with reuse, reuse, reuse? It sounds kind of charming, like a giant planet-wide flea market,
Okay, but imagine the clutter.
Oh, true.
And realistically, not everything can be reused forever.
Some things just reach their limit. Okay, so reduce only and reuse only both have their downsides. Which brings us to our current reality, the era of recycle, recycle, recycle. We're all dutifully sorting our plastics and cardboard, but is it actually enough?
That's the question, isn't it? And the article throws out this honestly kind of frightening statistic. Only about 9% of plastic ever actually gets recycled.
9%? Seriously?
Yeah.
That's just depressing.
It's a bit like trying to bail out a sinking boat without plugging the hole.
Ouch. Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. We can keep tossing things in the recycling bin.
Right.
But if we aren't also reducing what we buy and reusing whenever we can,
We're just
putting a Band-Aid on a much bigger problem.
Exactly.
I'm starting to see how these three R's are all connected,
They're totally intertwined.
So where do we even go from here? That 9% figure is kind of stuck in my head now.
Yeah, I get it.
It's easy to feel like our individual choices don't really matter, Like we're just a drop in the ocean.
I hear you, but that's where the article takes a really empowering turn.
Oh.
Yeah, it emphasizes that, yes, the statistics can feel overwhelming,
Totally.
but individual actions multiplied across a community, they absolutely do make a difference.
So we shouldn't just give up and resign ourselves to a planet buried in plastic.
Exactly. It's about turning that feeling of, oh no, this is awful, into positive action.
I like that.
The article's call to action is actually super inspiring. It reminds us that even with imperfect systems,
Right, because no system's perfect.
our choices still matter.
So it's not enough to just sort our trash properly. We should be pushing for those systems to actually improve too.
Little constructive feedback never hurts. But I actually think it starts even before that,
Really?
with education, with knowing the rules of the game, so to speak.
What do you mean?
The article really encourages everyone to get familiar with their local recycling rules. Because what you can recycle in one city might end up in a landfill in another.
Oh, that's so true. I've definitely been there, standing over the bin like, wait, is this recyclable?
Exactly. So knowing the specifics of your local system can seriously up your recycling game.
Knowledge is power, or something like that.
Right. And, when in doubt, especially with plastics,
Yeah.
think reuse first.
So when that little voice in my head is like, is this recyclable? I should just find a way to reuse it.
It's a great strategy. The article actually points out that recycling plastic, it's a lot more complicated than people think.
Oh, I bet.
It's not always a guarantee of true circularity, So finding ways to reuse those items can be a really effective way to lighten your environmental footprint.
Okay, so I'm picturing like turning old yogurt containers into planters, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Get creative. And remember, by reusing, you're not just keeping stuff out of landfills. You're also reducing the demand for brand new plastic.
It's like we're breaking free from that cycle of just buying more stuff all the time.
Right. And that shift in mindset, it's contagious.
Oh, I hope so.
When we show that we care about responsible consumption, it sends a message to companies, to policymakers, that things need to change.
So it's like this ripple effect, right? Our choices can inspire bigger systemic changes.
Exactly.
I love that. So it's not just on us as individuals, but also on supporting organizations that are pushing for those larger changes.
100%. That's why groups like GreenWaySquad are so important,
Yeah.
They're all about promoting sustainable practices and giving people the tools to make a real difference.
It's like they're handing us a toolkit and saying, okay, let's do this.
Exactly.
And speaking of tools, the article had some really interesting things to say about different materials, like how glass and metal are basically the rock stars of recycling.
Oh, they're amazing. Did you see those stats about how much energy you can save by just recycling aluminum cans?
I know. It was incredible. Do you remember the exact numbers?
Let's see. The Aluminum Association said that recycling aluminum saves a whopping 95% of the energy it takes to make it from raw materials. And get this, Recycle Now claims that glass is 100% recyclable.
100%. It's like they were made for the circular economy, right?
Speaking of which, I think it's worth quickly explaining what we actually mean by circular economy.
Good point. Not everyone might be familiar with that term.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So basically, it's all about keeping materials in use for as long as humanly possible. Minimizing waste and creating this closed-loop system,
Right.
moving away from that linear model of take, make, dispose towards something more sustainable and regenerative.
It just makes sense. Our resources are finite. We can't just keep taking and tossing forever.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
when you've got the option, choosing to recycle glass and metal, it's a no-brainer, especially compared to the headache that is plastic recycling.
It's like hitting the easy button for a healthier planet.
Hmm.
So we've talked a lot about reduce and recycle.
Yeah.
But I want to loop back to reuse for a sec. The article touched on this idea that even reusing isn't always as simple as it seems.
Right. It's not always sunshine and rainbows.
Exactly. It's not always easy to actually make it work.
It's all about finding that balance.
It's true. It's easy to go overboard. I've definitely been in that situation where I'm like, I'm going to reuse everything.
Right.
And then suddenly, my apartment's overrun with empty jars and egg cartons.
It's all about finding that middle ground, right?
Definitely. And you know what's interesting? The article pointed out that sometimes recycling might actually be the better option, even though it feels a little counterintuitive.
It's true. It's not always as black and white as reuse good, recycle bad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when would it actually make more sense to recycle?
Well, they gave the example of textiles, like clothes.
Okay.
While reusing clothes is great, not every area has good textile recycling programs,
That's true. It varies a lot.
So if you can't donate or repurpose those clothes, recycling might actually be the more responsible choice in those cases.
Wow. Okay. So it really depends on the systems we have available and making the best decision based on our own location. Makes you think. Okay, so what about stuff that requires, like, extra caution when you're getting rid of it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Safety first. The article made that super clear, especially when it comes to anything hazardous.
Right, because that old can of paint might not be the best choice for a DIY vase.
Exactly. So for things like, batteries, old electronics, anything potentially dangerous, always, always, always follow those specific disposal instructions.
Right, those are the times when proper recycling and disposal aren't optional.
Absolutely.
So it all boils down to awareness, doesn't it? Like, we have to educate ourselves about the materials we use, the systems in our communities, and the impact of our choices.
I think that's a perfect way to sum up our deep dive today. It's about moving beyond those catchy slogans and really digging into a more nuanced, informed approach to how we interact with all the stuff in our lives.
I like that.
It's not about being perfect, because nobody's perfect.
Certainly not.
But it's about making conscious choices that align with our values and contribute to a healthier planet.
Progress over perfection. That should be our new motto.
I love it. And remember, even the small changes, when we all do them together, can create a huge wave of change.
So true.
So, as we wrap up, think about this. What's one small change you can make in your own life based on what we've talked about?
That's a great question to leave everyone with. Maybe it's finally figuring out that recycling system in your building.
Right.
Or maybe it's challenging yourself to buy one less piece of clothing every month.
Whatever it is, it makes a difference.
Every little bit counts.
Absolutely. You have the power to create positive change. Embrace all 3 R's, never stop learning, and let's keep building a more sustainable future together.
And that's a wrap on this episode of The Deep Dive. Huge thanks to our expert for joining us today and dropping all this amazing knowledge.
My pleasure.
And to you, our listener, thanks for diving in with us. Remember, even the smallest actions can create a ripple effect. Until next time, stay curious.